In this video, we're going to talk about how life is organized from the smallest thing up to the largest thing. So let's start small. First, we can break down all living things into pieces, basically. The smallest piece, now this isn't considered alive, but the smallest piece of any organism is a subatomic particle. These are the smallest pieces of atoms. So we have protons and neutrons, which are in the nucleus of the atom, the red and the blue, and then electrons, which are around the outside in this electron cloud. We'll talk a little bit more about chemistry later. So subatomic particles would be the smallest way to organize life. Going one step up, subatomic particles make up atoms. An atom is the smallest unit of matter. So you can have a carbon atom, a hydrogen atom, an oxygen atom. You could look on the periodic table of elements and pick out any one of those as well. When we take atoms and we put atoms together, what do we get? We get a molecule. You may have said compound. Compound is similar. There's a slight definition difference between molecule and compound. So we're just going with molecule. A molecule is simply two or more atoms that are bound together. We'll look at chemical bonds later on in chemistry and how that holds them together. Examples of molecules would be water. Now Prezi, this software that I'm using to make my presentation, doesn't allow me to make a subscript. So this H should be capital like it is, but then the 2 should be smaller and down a little bit. So H2O. And then carbon dioxide, CO, it should be a little 2 at the bottom. Again, I can't do subscripts. If this confuses you, just see me and I'll explain it to you and show you what it looks like on my paper. So molecules, 2 or more atoms put together. If you take lots of molecules and put those together, in living things we start to make what are called organelles. You should be familiar with organelles because you learned about them in 8th grade. These are the little things inside of cells, the special structures, that have a job. You have the nucleus, which some people call the brain of the cell. That's not technically right, but it'll work for now. Mitochondria, the little power plants, they're little red bean-looking things that make energy. Lysosomes clean the cells. Peroxisomes help as well. Plasma membrane goes around the cell, allows things in and out. Those are all organelles. You put organelles together and the next step up, you get a cell. We talked about this in LO1. A cell is the smallest thing that is considered alive. So in humans, you have heart cells, you have neurons, which is this picture here. That's a special type of cell. Bone cells, skin cells, lots of different types. Put lots of cells together and you make a tissue. Tissues are groups of cells that have the same kind of job. This picture shows bone tissue. So these are all bone cells grouped together, and because they all have the same kind of job, we lump them together as bone tissue. You also have muscle tissue, which is made out of muscle cells. Next, one step up, you put lots of tissues together and you get organs. An organ is a group of tissues that has a similar job. Put bone tissue together, you're going to get bone. Heart tissue together, you're going to get a heart. Liver tissue, you're going to get a liver. Lots of organs that work together make up an organ system. So remember, we're getting bigger here. How life is organized from small to large. An organ system is a group of organs that work together to carry out a job. Cardiovascular system is made out of your heart, your lungs, your blood vessels. All of those organs work together. Muscular system, you have tons of different muscles all working together to help you move. So that would be an organ system. One step up from there. Lots of organ systems together, and all this stuff that we've just talked about up to this point make an organism. An organism is complex, and it's able to reproduce. An amoeba looks pretty simple, but if you look at how it works, it's still a pretty complex organism made out of one cell. Humans, dogs, etc. Now, if you get lots of organisms of the same type, of the same species, and put them together in a location, you get a population. When you're talking about a population, you need the organism plus the location. So here I have all of the penguins in the Arctic is describing a population. Now, since we're in the Arctic, let's consider other living things that are in the area. If we look at the penguins, the seals, the fish, the polar bears in the Arctic, all the living things, now we have a community. One step up from the community, if you consider all the living stuff plus what's not alive in that area, so ice, rocks, clouds, air, all this in the Arctic, we now have an ecosystem, and we can study things at the ecosystem level. The biggest layer of organization that we have is the biosphere. This is simply the part of Earth where things can live. And there's no example because we're just looking at this part of the Earth. So now I'm going to run backwards through these, going from big to small. The biosphere can be broken down into ecosystems, which are made of all the living and non-living stuff in a location. If you look at just the living things in that location, you're looking at a community. If you narrow that community down to just one species, you're looking at a population. If you narrow the population down to just one living thing in that group, now you're looking at an organism. You can start to break down an organism and look at its organ systems and how its body works together. You can look at that, pick one organ system and look at an organ and how that organ works. You can study that organ and what it's made of. It's made out of tissues. And if you look at what tissues are made of, they're made out of many cells put together. Cells are made out of organelles. Organelles are made out of molecules. Molecules are two or more atoms put together. And atoms are made out of subatomic particles. So these are all the ways that we can organize life and study life at these different levels. And we'll be starting out with organelles in the next unit and cells and working our way up from there and eventually studying ecology with ecosystems and communities and populations towards the end of the year and looking at specific animals and plants, and it'll be a lot of fun this year. I love all these different levels. There's so much that you get to see and do at each different part of biology. So next, your job is to conference with me on these levels. You're going to have to come up with an example of your own. You can't use the things that I stated in this video. And you don't have to write them down unless you want to if it's going to help you remember. But come up with a different example for every category on your page except subatomic particles because there's only 3. And except the biosphere because there is no example. So I could ask you, give me an example of a tissue, and you couldn't say muscle or bone because I talked about them in the video. I could also turn it around on you and say, all of the humans in Africa are an example of which level. And you'd have to tell me, oh, that's a population because you're looking at a species in a place. So be prepared to conference with me about this page, and if there's something you don't understand, make sure you see me before you conference. If there's a line for the conferences, just start a list of names on the board and I'll call you up when I get to you, and then you could start on the next video or the next assignment as you wait.